Hey guys, and welcome to my little channel. I'm going to describe for you how to create items, spells, feats, and even whole classes so you can get started on your modding journey for Baldur's Gate 3. First up, just a little context. Baldur's Gate 3 is built on a similar engine as what Larian Studios used in Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. And those games had a lot of options for modifications that the base release of Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have. It's pretty likely that the limits of the unmodded toolkit are due to licensing agreements with Wizards of the Coast. So you'll have to bear with Larian for making this system a little less accessible than its previous games. But first things first is you create your mod. So either here in New Project, type a file name, or in Projects, you press Create, and then you would open up whatever your mod is. You wait for this to load. It'll probably ask you then to open your level. And probably the best one is just the plain level editor, because it's just the quickest to jump to, though it's the ugliest, I will say that. So basic level A. If you don't know how to find things like this, like basic level A, because it won't show up initially, type it up here. Basic level A. Okay, that'll find you the basic level A that you can click. This one isn't the best for demonstrating any of your mods or taking pictures of your mods. Although I still do that because I don't really care. I don't build it for other people. I just sort of build it for myself. But this is just a platform of just random ground and just one person walking around. As you'll notice, I press this button up here. This gets you into the game so that it actually runs. Okay, so the first things first is you will notice that right down here you have a folder name right here that is basically the name of your mod. And in this folder, if you were to have weapons or items, they would show up here in this little slot here. Everything else in the game are in these folders. So that might be, what's this? Barbarian. So these are armors or something like that. They're going to be in here, and these are like specific items or whatever. And this is useful if you're going to be creating say a weapon or something based on this, and you'll notice they'll have their own unique UUIDs. UUIDs are used for anything that you create in the game that needs to be referenced as an individual thing so that it doesn't get confused for something else. And yeah, so I'm wondering why that isn't coming up with an armor or something. But this is the folder that you want to be aware of. Okay, so the next thing that you want to be aware of, like this is only important for items and such, is the stats editor. So in the stats editor, you'll find a very similar setup. There is this shared folder. You'll see these dice sets. You'll see main UI, mod browser, and then again, shared dev, Gustav, and Gustav dev. So the main ones you want to think about are shared dev, Gustav, and Gustav dev. The first port of call when you want to look for something is shared. You just look in here. So for example, spells will actually be probably, is it under spell data? I think so. Yes, so like a shout spell. Like, let's say, Blade Ward, oh, right, Hellish Rebuke or Flame Blade or whatever, False Life. These are shouts, and they apply statuses. And you'll see here is something saying like Hellish Rebuke, and it's -1. -1 usually just means that it doesn't have a turn duration. Okay, but you see there's like different properties all along this line that can be adjusted. So this is the description parameter. It's not actually changing the damage. And this is a tooltip. So you've got tooltips and descriptions and things like that. And none of these are actually going to be doing damage for Hellish Rebuke because Hellish Rebuke is something that applies a status. Where is it? The very start. It applies a status, Hellish Rebuke. These ones are like regain hit points and so on. And that will actually take information from this status data pile down here, which Hellish Rebuke, that's probably, I'm probably not going to find it, but it's most of them are usually in status boost. But usually they're connected in this way. So you'll look first in the shared file, and then you will look if it's like in later chapters or later level spells, you look further down. So things like Gustav Dev, spell data will have more complicated things. So I wonder if there's like a wall spell or something. No, wall of fire. So you've got like some wall of fire stuff here, with some target spells. But yeah, you'll just generally have much more advanced or enemy type spells in these lower folders. So that's just a quick thing to notice. So once you, okay, let's look at these stats menus here. So in your class or in your mod, in the stats file, you'll notice that there's all these different things like equipment, your spell data, stats. Stats is going to be for armors, objects, weapons, different passives that you create. And then status data is going to be for like boosts and such, like here for different mage armors or different hunter's marks or different blindnesses and so on, which is used in this mod. All right, so there's this stats. That's usually something for like your actions and is for your spells and effects, and as well as the spells and effects of your armors and your items. Then there is the UUID object editor here. This is super important for lists and your class descriptions. So you'll notice I've got like three little things here. There's progressions, there's lists, and class descriptions. Progressions is going to be the main thing for your classes. So this Flash Fighter class, it has 12 different things here. Don't worry about these ones. I was just using those as references. But you'll notice that there's a new UUID for each level of the class. And there is one unique table UUID for all of that class. So they've all got the same. And then it's got like the different levels here. And then it's got what passives are added on each specific level, like what you get. So this class gets fast reflexes and so on. It gets an action resource, so an action superiority die. And at the very start, it obviously gets proficiency bonuses with armors, weapons, and that sort of thing. And it has specific selectors like what spells it's going to get, as well as what expertise and what kind of like skill proficiencies it's going to have. And generally, you just take those from other classes and you just put them in. Okay. And that is progressions, but you'll also need for creating a class, you'll need class descriptions over here, and you'll just basically create one for each class you're going to create. It's going to have a special UUID, and it's going to have a progression table UUID. This is going to be the same progression table UUID as was here in progressions. So you notice that's 1DA, and this is 1DA. Now, that doesn't, the way that you create that UUID is you just literally just create something like this, I don't know, and it's going to create a new UUID, and then once you have a new UUID, you can just put it in there, and then you can just delete this. Clear row. Well, you don't even need to delete it, but whatever. And yeah, you just make sure you have one UUID for that. And here is where you control things like the health and so forth, like the base HP, how much HP per level, different things with the hotbars. I don't think changing the character poses actually works this way, so you can't really change the character pose here, I don't think. You can change the class equipment. So this one being Ranger, they will actually get the Ranger stuff. And you can change the tags and so on. So I don't know how to change the tags throughout, like, and create special tags throughout the game. Like when it's like a ranger says this or a paladin says this. So generally when you create a class, you'll just create something close enough and go with that. All right. So the main three things to notice just from the very start is the this folder, the stats editor, and the UUID object editor. So there are always going to be base files of the main game that you can't edit, and then there's going to be files of your class that you can edit. The main thing to notice here is that with any of these different things that you have, say like these different items here, you can right click on them. Okay, so it's showing the items here. So this is a bandit armor. And if you wanted to change this and edit this, you basically have to get this file or a version of this file or a copy of this file into your file folder here. And the way to do that is once you've found the thing that you like, you can right click on it and you can say create new from selected or create inherited from selected or override inactive mod. So if you're going to override in an active mod, that means that you're going to have more likely clashes with other mods that might use that same resource. So usually you're going to want to create new from selected or create inherited from selected. Generally create new from selected. And that's going to bring up these sort of things here. If you'll notice, there is like a display name. The display names can often have they can have glitches and not display properly when you create a mod. So sometimes you might create you might specially name this armor like Special Armor 1 or something, and it might just default appear as the original name because it may inherit its previous properties or its previous name whenever it doesn't find a match or it does something wrong or it hasn't found something the right way. But you generally want to change what's in here. Not everything will change or will work, but you just give it your best try. So here you'll notice that this is using a parent root template ID here. It's using a specific physics resource which is connected to that. So this loot armor bandit A, and it's got a visual resource. So these are kind of like the main things that are connected to it, as well as this, as well as the main name there. And also further down here, you'll have the stats, where the stats are held. which are here. So you see this, it says stats, and this basically connects to the other part of modding, which is modding the stats and what they are. So you can change this, and you could change this so that it has different stats as a different item that already exists, or you can create your own stats for this item. So if we were to create a random, say, starting armor for this class, based on this bandit's armor, you could call this starting armor, and that would be fine. You don't need to change anything else except this thing down here where it's right down the bottom, and you need a unique name for this so it doesn't clash. And you can name that whatever you want. I just put SS here because that's just generally what I do, and you'll just find whatever you like to put there. And as you create this, what will happen is it will create that same item, but it will create it with a new UUID over here, and it will have that new base name connected to it. This one will say starting armor here, and if we go to here, it will save everything. If I go into the game, you can press, I believe it is Control Shift F11, and you can, I believe it's insert, no, spawn item. You press spawn item, and then you start typing in the UUID 9184A. It's not loaded in yet, so what you might want to do is, if it doesn't load in, you go to here and you reload level. Once it reloads the level, usually you'll be able to find that item, especially when it's got this check mark here. All right, so we go into the game, Control Shift F11, and we go to spawn an item, 9184A, armor of a bandit, SS. Click here, and that should have put a bandit armor there. So we didn't change anything in this bandit armor, but we could have. So this one says starting armor. You see as you pick it up. In the game, it might not say starting armor, but it's basically just padded bandit armor. And boop, put that on, and look, it just looks like a leather armor. And I believe it looks like a leather armor because, let's go out of the game mode. This one, parent root template, is just literally a leather armor. And if we were to change that to leather armor red, for example, and we set that, and then we save that, then I think if we reload, might need to reload, reload level, it should maybe be red. Yeah, he looks red right there. All right. So now he looks red, and that looks like a pretty cool armor to start with. That's completely unintentional, by the way. I didn't realize there even was an armor like that in the game. Cool. So now he's got this random cool starting armor. And if we were to apply that to his class so that he would have that, we can start on that project right away by going, I believe, is it to the stats editor? I think, with equipment, and if we want to base equipment on something that already exists, such as the equipment that he's currently using in his class, we would go here and find equipment, because most of them are going to be in shared folder. You go into this, there's going to be all these different things. There's this equipment CC Ranger. What I would do here is you just override in this one. Now you don't necessarily want to adjust anything on this specific one, but you may want to just copy it and paste it here and adjust it. So we could call it equip underscore cc flash fighter. And it would have all the same stuff, except maybe we want to change what the main armor is. See, this is armor camp body, leather body. So this is the one that you want to change. And let's see if it will allow us to actually put this one in. So it might not allow us, because sometimes it doesn't allow you to use the modded ones. Okay, so what is it called? If I move this up, it's called Bandit. Yeah, it's not going that way. Bandit. Well, if you were to change, I suppose if you overrode it or something, you could find one of these and you'd be able to do it. Sometimes this literally won't let you add something new into the equipment that you start with, but sometimes it will. So it's a bit fiddly, but you can change these up at least a little bit to your liking, and maybe instead you can input this equipment via like a cheat editor or something like that. And there may be ways to actually put it into the game, but I just don't know how to do those. So sometimes you can change this and you can put it in. Other times you can't. But what you definitely can do is you can change its stats. So you can go here and you can go to stats. Let's go here and go to armor. And you could basically create some armor here. If you want to look at the stats of some other specific armors, you can go up to shared. You can go into, not into equipment, but you would look at stats armor and say if there's some specific armor that you would want it to be like. Say if you want it to be like there's a vanity armors. Let's just make it a normal leather armor that we're copying. Override in Flash Fighter. It's going to show it here. So if you want to use that as a reference, you absolutely can. So you could make it so that, oh, for our specific thing that we want this to be, like armor, leather, body, SS, whatever, or make it FF. You can change the armor class and you can say, okay, I'll use this as a reference, but then I'll just alter it so it has 12, or maybe it has 10. And you can change, like this is just, that's the value of the armor. It sometimes does this thing where it skips back and forth. You'll find that a little bit annoying, but it'll just be something that happens. And yeah, you can edit whatever effects it has. This has no effects because it's a basic thing, but there is usually something here, such as in default boosts, maybe? Like passives on equip. So here, this gives like a height maneuver passive. You could put this in here, or boost on equip. So this one has a roll bonus attack. You could get something from whatever you're doing, and you could paste that. And this is height and maneuver passive. Okay, let's copy that and paste that. And then we have this armor leather FF. We can save that. And once it saves, yep. Then once it saves, we can go down to the stats of the armor. Where are the stats? The stats are right here. This will let you change it. So, leather, and then you'll see this FF come up here. You can click that, and so long as I save that, and likely reload. I'm not sure if it will come up with the tool descriptions, but it should show an extra bit of armor on this guy. So 12 AC, though I'm not sure that's applying it. Not sure that's applying it properly. So he may need to take that off. It can be just a little bit fiddly. Reload level. Stats of leather armor SS should work. If we Control Shift F11 and spawn item, and then 9184, that one. Oops, that might have gone in some weird place. Okay, here, starting armor. And then here. Now we've got the height and maneuver. Targets have disadvantage on saving throws against maneuvers of your weapons and actions, and attack +1, which are the passives we put on it. This has changed, and so on. If you want to change the icons, you can change the icons as well. Let me see where that is. It might be the visual resource. There'll be icons or something along here. Anyways, it'll be functional enough that way. So you can create your armor and your weapons in just that same way. That's how weapons and armors and things are created. And yeah, sometimes you can put them in through the equipment section, like I showed. Other times you can't, and you might just have to find a workaround way to use it. I know it's not like the best, but this is kind of what I mean by not being 100% or completely clear. And I think that's partly because of the Wizards of the Coast thing. It's made a little bit trickier so that it doesn't compete with Wizards of, Wizards of the Coast having to create. They're going to create their tabletop editing software soon. So yeah, it can't compete with that. So that is generally how you create items. Now let's go on to simple things like spells. So you can create all kinds of different unique spells for your characters, and there's a few different steps that you want to take when you're creating spells. So you want to create the spell first, then you want to put it in something called a spell list. So creating the spells is either going to have like a status boost in it, or it's just going to have the spell data from it. Like it could be a projectile, it could be a shout, it could be target, it could be throw, it could be zone spell. So zone spells are things like flaming hands. Target spells are things like ray of frost. Shouts are things like rage and things that buff yourself, like Featherfall. You've got Rush, which is kind of like your charging spells that are going to charge at people. And projectile spells are things like throwing bombs and things like that. So you can make interesting spells by just using a projectile versus a target spell. But the projectile won't be counted as an actual spell. It will count as an action rather than a spell. And I believe that some of these are even your weapon actions as well. So in this spell data, your weapon actions, I believe, target. You have things like lunging attack and ensnaring strike, disarming attack, which can all be changed. So if you're going to be changing a feat that's going to be changing changing these spells, or you can make unique weapon attack spells or things for people for like a class, and you can create them in here in spell data. It may create an effect. If it does create an effect, like this one here applies status, like this Hordebreaker one applies status, then you'll have to be starting to deal in things like status boost down here. And status boost down here is it's a little more complicated, but it's not crazy complicated. So, but we will get into that a bit later. So generally, you want to create the stats for the spell first, and then once you've done that, you go into the UUID object editor, and then you create a list. So what a list is it's basically just a list of specific spells that are connected to a UUID. And this UUID is essentially something you put in the class progression, which is going to be here in this selectors thing. So add spells, bracket, UUID of that list of spells, and then end bracket. Or you can, I believe it's even select spells. You can have something that says select spells and then a UUID, and then there's gonna be like a dash, like there is here, and then there's going to be like a 3 or something after it that allows you to choose 3 of those spells on level up. And yeah, so that's a thing that you can do. Or you can have them as inherent spells where it just adds all the spells in that list, like I have in this class. And this one 6369 is connected to this one 6369. So these are the Mirio cantrips, which is just target, force whip, shout, shimmer, shout, blade ward, and so on and so forth. So the specific spells that you want for your classes are going to be selected in these lists. And where is this? So, and in stats, where is it in stats? If I go to stats, spell data, I have these different spells in here, like this shimmer spell is like a blur spell that's just been adjusted to last for 2 turns rather than 10 turns. And this mirror image has been applied, I believe it lasts for 3 turns. And yeah, I think that's the special thing about it, is it just lasts for 3 turns. And this mage armor, this has a special thing to it, which is the mage armor. So here you've got to not be wearing armor. This is something you find on the normal mage armor thing. It looks for, okay, we can apply this spell if it's not wearing armor and doesn't have mage armor on already, then you can apply it. You can see here the use cost. This shows you that it's bonus action to cast, which is different from normal mage armor. Here's all the sounds and stuff. You can make things sound different by adjusting those. Apply status, mage armor. Okay, so this one actually might be interesting to look at because it's likely I changed what it does in this mage armor status, right? So let's take a look at that. Mage armor status, status boost. Here, mage armor 0. So normally the statuses, they are capitalized to show that they're different. So generally when you see these capitalized letters, that's a status, while the not capitalized ones are usually just like the spells. So if we go over here, there's going to be a description, there's going to be the icon that it's using, and you can change little things. So this one here says additional armor bonus comes from charisma instead of dexterity. This is the stack ID. So there is a stack that comes up on this side of, I believe, connected to your portrait, and it has a certain amount of stacks on there. Okay. Boosts. Okay, so this is the boost. So this armor gives 15 armor, and it bases itself on charisma rather than intelligence or dexterity or anything like that. So, or dexterity. So instead of adding your dexterity to the armor bonus, it adds charisma instead, and you could change that to constitution or whatever you want. So AC override formula, then the number of the AC and true, and add that, and you can create things like the spirit plate armor that the class uses. Let me actually demonstrate that. So Shift Control F11, I think you press CC, and then you can say Start New or Start Respec. And if you press this, it allows you to basically test your classes. So here, Flash Fighter, whatever. Just add random stuff. And I think Control Shift F11, level up. I think I got to level up 2 levels to get it. So let's see. You'll notice it gets random abilities here, like these abilities here. Alright, whatever. You can make it so that it gets a feat at whatever level you want. I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, so here it gets its spirit plate armor, and it gets its fast reflexes ability and stuff. Alright, let's go here. It also gets some weapon attacks. Okay, so you'll notice he's got 13 armor here because that's special armor. But what we can do is we can press this, and he gets his spirit plate armor. And let's make him actually wear some clothes. And you'll notice that it's using the base armor class, like +5, and then +5 from spirit plate armor, and then +2 from his charisma. So you can create things like that. Okay. Is there something else I can show here? So this is a hunter's mark that has 2 targets that you can select. Can't fully show it here because I can't input enemies, so that kind of sucks. There is something called a blazing attack. So it just adds a little bit of fire damage. It's basically the same as dipping your weapon. There's something here called shimmer, which is just blur, obviously, but it only lasts 2 turns. And it gives you like resistance, so it helps you against saving throws. But if you do get hit, it cancels. So like there's a concentration check on it. There's this blind, where I've changed the radius so you can't like blind people far away, just people in close. He's also got this cleave attack. And what's some other things? So a force whip. So this is a whip, like vine whip, but instead of using piercing, it uses force damage. And I just given him guidance and featherfall and other utility cantrips like that. What's this? Yeah, that's nothing. Okay. Let me level him up a little bit further so you can see another couple random spells because they are interesting. Shift control. Level up. Maybe it's another 3 levels. Because there's one based on projectiles, which is interesting. Okay, enhance ability, Misty Step. So you can change Misty Step so that you could just have like infinite Misty Steps if you wanted and things like that. So okay, here he gets it. So he gets this weird Sparkstones thing and these weird cantrips that are made like Erupt and Bedazzling Flames. Okay, so Bedazzling Flames blinds creatures as well as does burn damage. Erupt, it throws creatures back. And Flames of Frost, it's if you're wearing like the encrusted frost ring, it'll make like an ice surface, but otherwise it just does ice damage. And I believe it slows creatures down. Anyways. Oh, and he's got this Oasis spell as well, which gives him a little bit of healing. Like just like 1 per turn, and it makes him resistant to necrotic. Anyways. Let's just skip past that so I can show you the spell, and then we'll go into showing how those spells are created. Okay, so this one is a projectile spell, and literally it throws projectiles. So you can make it so that they have an area radius of effect. You can make it so that it has a certain distance, and you can make it so it has a specific effect on impact as well as the sounds. Flames of Frost, you can change the radius, the distance, how far it goes, what it looks like. So that is actually the I believe it's color spray that it's using there. And okay, what's this? Erupt. So it just throws creatures away in like a 360 arc. And bedazzling is just it just causes blinding and stuff. So those are some of the abilities that it has. Now let's go into creating those abilities. So in stats here, this is where you start when you start creating a spell. So if we were to create a different spell here, let's just go to the same spell and just create a spell. Let's create the exact same spell. So the projectile spells here of Sparkstones is something I literally just took from a grenade bomb, I believe up here in shared. So I took something from projectile in spell data, and I was like, well, what do I like? And you go shopping. You look for certain things that might be interesting, that might be possible, and see this grenade bomb. I took that, and then I overrode in here, but I changed the name so that it wouldn't override it. And then I made it so that it would have a cooldown once per combat. It doesn't have to, obviously. I wanted it to have this ability to ignite surfaces, so I kept those. But you really don't need anything in those spell properties there. Target floor. So this is just whether it can target the floor or not, like it actually destroys the floor. And usually you don't want it to be able to destroy the floor that it's on. So you would have that at -1 so that it's like, no, it doesn't target the floor. Target radius. This is how far that distance is around what's going to be affected. This area radius, this is the projectile itself, that little circle around each of the projectiles. I think, yes. There's an explode radius. Maybe those are both the same thing. I don't know. Amount of targets. I believe that's how many of them you can throw. And then there's going to be something called projectiles. Yeah, projectile count. So amount of targets is where you can throw it to, and you can actually put like several different projectiles in each of these like locations where it lands, and they'll just roll like their own dice. So you could have it have multiple projectiles or something like that if you really wanted. But in this one, I didn't. On this, you'll see the spell roll, spell success, spell fail, target conditions. This is about applying effects to them, so applying status effects. So this one is the spell roll. So you say what the saving throw is that they have to get past to not be affected, so that it becomes like a spell fail. And in this one, they still get this status applied of a Sparkstone shock, which is a special status they're created. And they also get damaged, but it's half the damage that they normally would get. And the damage type is listed here. It could be piercing, it could be anything else. And this is like the dice, and plus a certain amount, and then it's halved. And you'll notice that in the spell roll success, there's the same damage here, but it's not halved because it succeeded. And it applies this Sparkstone shock for 1 turn. What's this? This stuff is just left over from the grenade stuff, and I didn't bother changing it. Didn't really care. And target conditions, same thing. Like, okay, you can target just not yourself and not a dead creature. Like, okay, cool. Trajectories, I didn't change that. That's like locked in with like this grenade bomb. You'd have to know more about it to change that than I do. So you can change this icon. So this one was changed to warding flares icon. So that I think it was already warding flares icon actually. So I just kept it there. And you can change the description there. Where's the description? Where is this description? Here we go. Once before combat, a flash fighter can prepare 3 spark stones, tactical surprise for their opponent, whatever you're going to say, you can put it in there. Tooltip damage. So this is what's going to show what the damage is when you're hovering over it. So this one you can see it says 3d4 plus 3 lightning damage, 3d4. Because each sparkstone does that damage, I had to put it in 3 times. So that when you look at this, come on, load up. Hey, move around, dude. Okay, you'll see those 3 damage instances there. And that's what that is. That's what that's displaying right there. And so then it equals up the thing automatically and it shows how much damage it is in total. And each of the projectiles does 3d4 plus 3 lightning damage. Okay. Which is literally controlled by this. And it automatically adds up that that total for you from that. Tooltip on save. Yeah, I don't really change that. I don't think you really notice that. Cast sound. So this one, I literally took the cast sound from Thunder, Shatter, while this one was Fireball. So it was originally Fireball, and I went and I looked up what's, like from here, I looked up Shatter, and then I got like the cast sound from that. And you can change the use costs. So you'll notice that this actually costs a reaction action point rather than just an action point. And that is because this class gets reaction points to use its abilities. And yeah, it's a special ability, and so instead of using multiple special abilities in a turn, they can only use one of those special abilities or 2, depending on how strong they get and how many of those points they get. Hit. And this prepare effect. This is like when they pull back their arm, and it's like shing, like you've clicked it, and then they're going to be holding something in their arm. So if you're pulling back a grenade, it does a fireball prepare effect apparently, which is like it holds back the arm and whatever. This one is, I have a burning hands target effect or something. I don't know why. I was just like, whatever. It's generic lightning. This one's generic lightning, actually. Yeah. I don't know why it says target burning hands up there. That's just one of those strange things that sometimes happen. This one actually has a drop down, and it's selected as lightning, and it happens as lightning too. And this one's shocking grasp, and then the target effect is also shocking grasp, and then finally the hit effect when it hits is like a fireball. That doesn't make much sense, but I did that kind of like really loose. And then damage type lightning, and you make sure that you make everything consistent along that, and it should work. And if it does have something that applies a status, then you want to make a status. So where is this? So like here in spell success, if it applies a status, like this here, apply status, spark stone shock 100, and for 1 turn, then what you want to do is you want to go into this spell, and I believe that's in boost, but it's not going to be in shared version, it's going to be in our version. Spell data, and where is it? It's in status data boosts. And then if we find Sparkstone Shock here, it was based on Ray of Frost, so I just renamed that, and then I just changed a few things. Watch this, the passive action icon, like warding flare, like I changed the icon to warding flare from Ray of Frost, so it would be consistent. Weakened, this still animation type, this is showing what the enemy looks like when they're affected, whether they're weakened, blinded, and so on. So Ray of Frost does that naturally, and so I just kept that. Sound loop, I don't ever really notice that, so I didn't bother changing it. Stack ID, I put Sparkstone Shock. This, I think what it does is it relates back to the name itself, and then if the name has an icon in it, it uses that icon. So with Stack ID, just use the name of whatever your spell is, and then it will use the same icon as that spell or that status. Boosts. Okay. So this one specifically, what it does is it uses a boost that is already behind the scenes in, like, we're kind of overriding base game files when we're creating a mod. And so we're the most forward in that process, like we're the latest thing that's loaded, or overriding a base idea. There are basic sort of boosts that exist within the system, deeper in the system, like this action resource movement boost. They're not really in like this shared dev thing, but you'll find them referenced everywhere there. And so this one says action resource, and then it says movement. And you could make it so that they have plus movement, additional movement, but this one takes away I believe it's 6 meters of their movement. So it basically freezes them in place so that they can't move, or they can barely move. For the normal Ray of Frost, it's -3. So I just changed it to be -6, which is not balanced at all, but you can do whatever you want with your things. Okay, so remove status, sleep on apply functions. Okay, so this is, if you get hit by this, like this status affects you, if you're asleep, it's going to remove that. Like it's going to wake you up. I was like, fine, I'll keep that there. It's not something I added there, but it's something I was like, okay, I'll just keep that there, whatever. Doesn't matter. So status boosts aren't really scary when you're doing it. It's literally this a little bit easier even than like the spell data stuff, except in 2 cases. One is when there are like sub files, like in Spirit Guardians, where Spirit Guardians has a choice between necrotic and radiant damage. That's that one's quite complex to the point that I can't figure it out, or where there is an example here, like a functioning example here, that I believe is, let's see, is it a shout? No. Is it a target? It's probably, yeah, it's target. So it's enhanceability here. So enhanceability here, it has multiple ones. So you'll notice that I've got enhanceability, owl's wisdom, bear's endurance, all these, and I just put like an underscore O on the end because I when I'm just overriding or adding it or changing a spell, I find that's just like the easiest because then I just reference the same, like it will automatically have something like this in there, and then I can just put underscore and then whatever I want after it and change it. So like when it's doing apply status cat's grace, I could put like a underscore O. Not that I would here, because this is referencing cat's grace and I want it to apply cat's grace as it's normally applied. But yeah, you could create another thing here and make it reference cat's grace, which does something different, but I wasn't going to do that. I just wanted it to do the base thing here. But I created all of these underneath the main one, enhanceability, because this one, it's a container spell. So it has these things, target, enhanceability, bear's endurance, underscore 0, O in it. And it has all those spells in it, kind of like a spell list. And it's like saying, okay, this list of spells will be available when you click this spell. And you can select from them. Target conditions, character ally itself, transmutation items. Like, I just basically used the same one that they use, except with this enhanceability, I believe I changed what it costs or what the cooldown was. So once per combat. So I just changed the cooldown. So instead of using the inherent normal enhanceability and giving them that, I wanted it to be once per combat. So I made it its own individual thing. And then I had to put all the sub things in that, and then it applies status, but I didn't create different statuses for that because I was happy with the status it would create. But you could change like how long it lasts. So this one, it's -1 because it doesn't have a timer. It's on permanently until you fail or a concentration check or you replace a concentration check. But I could essentially change it so that it doesn't have a concentration check. And I also wanted to change it so that the action point was different, so that when you spend this, you spend a reaction point. Or change it. It could be a bonus action or whatever you want to be doing. Okay. Right. Okay, so that's mostly that. And let's look at a different spell, another spell that might be interesting. So let's, not the shout spells, zone spells. Let's try. Could do this cleave one. This is like an action. So if we look at this, I just took cleave from up here in shared, and this is in a zone spell. There's going to be cleave in here somewhere. Yeah, it's right there. So I took that and I put that down in this one. In this zone spell. And then I made it so that it had a cooldown of once per turn, but usually that'll be once per short rest. And spell roll. So I made it attack on the weapon type itself. So you can have it have a base DC, like a difficulty class that the opponent has to overcome. Like, for example, this saving throw here, where ability, constitution, and your spell source DC, or you could have that be like just a base. Let's see if any of them have a base one. No, they're all based on the spell source DC, but whatever. You can make it, you can find something that has the reference here of the spell roll that will show like a specific DC that they have to accomplish in order to save from it, but often it's going to just be your spell source spell DC. And for this one, it's just your weapon attack. So if your weapon attack lands, then it does whatever it does. I didn't put a spell fail in because, well, you could say like if the cleave misses them, it still does some kind of damage or causes some kind of effect. You can have that. So you could even have an attack action, which whenever it misses, it still does something, like it could cause imbalanced or off balance or something like that, that gives you advantage on your next attack. You could put that here in spell fail and have like change your main attack action so that it does that if you wanted to. But on spell success, I just made it deal damage, main melee weapon. And this is like the stuff that's normally there on cleave, but on cleave, I believe it has this, but then it says divide by 2. And so I removed the divide by 2 that cleave normally has. Actually, we can look at cleave. So let's look at what that is. So zone, cleave, deal damage, main melee weapon divided by 2. See? And that's what was changed. And target conditions, I also changed one specific other thing in that. So where is this? The zone. As you scroll across, I obviously changed descriptions, display names. I kept the icon the same as any normal cleave. Yes, so you'll have to change the tooltip of the damage list. So this would normally have like divided by 2 behind it, and so I made sure that that was changed. This is showing what saving throw is necessary. So if something was attacking the spell source DC of Constitution or whatever, so you change that just so it's consistent with everything else. Cast sound, so you could obviously change the sounds if you wanted to. You could change it to like a spell sound or any other action sound. You just find the reference for it, and then you would put that in here. But going along, okay, so there's going to be shapes, and as you can see here, there's square. This was cone. I believe there's even like circle and stuff. So for zones, I'm not sure there is a circle actually. No, there definitely is. Offset, this is how far away from your character it starts. So like starting directly on your character or just having that little grace period outside of your character. Default is -2, so I just keep it at that. And then I believe like default, it's actually 2 range, but like I extended the range because I'm cheating kind of, but yeah. And then the angle, you can change the angle. So I believe normally it's like 90 degrees, like a cleave is, and you could change it so that it's much wider and broader, and then you can change, you know, how much it costs to do the action. Here's the spell animation. You're best just taking spell animations from things that already exist. Most of these animations, in fact, are taken from, I believe, like a lot of the same animations are used in like the previous games. So, like I know the rage animation is definitely taken from, or is very similar to Divinity Original Sins stuff. So you just take these animations from other places, and then you just put them in here, or keep the same, or just use the one from your reference. Spell flags, yeah, that's kind of important for like whether enemies attack you or not. So is harmful means like if you do that in town, then people are going to attack you. So normally these will be pretty correct with your reference spell, but you can alter those. Recharge values, what's this? I do not know what that means. Animation intents, I don't know. Can use weapon actions and is proficient with equipped weapon action. You could change that so that it doesn't have that. But then it would go through even if you're disarmed. And what actually stops you from using a weapon action? I don't know. But if there's something that stops you using weapon action, then it would just, you'd just be able to do it anyway. Cast effect, general, prepare effect, cleave. So I kept those the same, but you could obviously change those. Just depending on what thing you want the reference to look like. And that's basically that. So that's there. Normally, the biggest thing you want to pay attention to is here on spell roll and spell success and spell fail, because this is where you can apply your different statuses and stuff. And if you want to create a status, then of course you can create a status, and you go into status boost and you create a status. Best to start off with simple statuses, just like Hordebreaker is going to be more complex because Hordebreaker has multiple different things in it. It's got this Hordebreaker technical, Hordebreaker target, and Hordebreaker mechanic, which makes it more complex and weird. In fact, I didn't put this in the class because it didn't quite work the way that I wanted it to. You could just change like a few small things from Hordebreaker and then it wouldn't likely break. But if you change like a lot of different things, then maybe it'll just straight break. So instead, I created that cleave, which I found to be better anyways. Hunter's Mark was really complicated to get it to reapply properly. And to get it to reapply properly, I just had to keep going through like, why isn't it not working? Just multiple times making sure everything was consistent. And like they were consistent and everything seemed like it should work. But then like whenever the first cast of the spell has done, it then just applies normal Hunter's Mark. And I was like, what is that? And often those weird things come because of the parent spell. It just reverts back to its parent spell, and you might not be able to do anything with that. You might just have to accept that there's like a limitation of it just jumping back to its parent spell, which isn't the best, but yeah, it's there. But say with Hunter's Mark, this is all I changed with Hunter's Mark to make it a different thing. Like this fighter's focused target is where is it? I think it's how many people you can select. So where is this? Move status. Okay, so the original Hunter's Mark thing, this looks like it doesn't specifically change anything in the status, but it references it. Okay, affected entity suffers. Okay, is there anything that it does? Sound. It's got remove conditions. Okay, so this is like when they get knocked out, it removes the condition of Hunter's Mark. It brings them into contact if you cast the spell. On apply functors. This is the most important thing here, and on remove functors. So on remove functors, it's going to remove the status effect from like a knocked out creature, which happens a little earlier. Remove condition, knocked out. So when a creature is knocked out, it's then going to say, okay, that's the remove condition. I'm going to apply this remove condition. You could apply a different spell on them after they're knocked out, and maybe it could have a certain set of turns, like 2 turns or something. So I don't know, maybe not knocked out, but there might be a has status and then like something else that causes it. I don't know. Like you could just have something else that removes the condition, like wet. Like the person gets wet and then all of a sudden they're going to have 2 turns of like moving slowly or something. And you could apply something like that here with like 2 turns rather than this -1, and then it would vanish after it or something. But oh, it's so annoying how it does that. Okay. So here on apply functors, you'll notice that this one is quite complex. It says AI only, if as blah blah blah, Hunter's Mark and is not downed and blah 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 blah, Hunter's owner. And this might be, in fact, why it doesn't work properly, because I haven't changed these ones. Yeah, it's most likely the case. That's probably the thing that I overlooked. Hunter's Mark, reapply or has status. Yeah, it's probably definitely this or something that I didn't change. That's why the reapply didn't work. Whatever, that's fine. Hunter's Mark owner, AI, if has status. Hunter's Mark. Oh, it's almost certainly I didn't do this properly. On apply functors. Whatever. This is the owner of the Hunter's Mark. Tick functors. Yeah, so sometimes it's just like there's going to be complicated statuses. Okay, so the Hunter's Mark thing, it doesn't apply passive, but this one does. So Hunter's Mark owner. Okay, and this reapply, this is the unlock spell of reapply. So when it removes a status, it gives you a reapply ability, and then it gives you that. That's likely where I messed up as well. Okay, so Hunter's Mark 0. Let's just look at this. So the initial version of it works, not the second version of it. So let's Hunter's Mark 0. So that is in the spell. So that's because it's under, it's like not capitalized. I know that that's a spell. And then that is target, I believe. Hunter's Mark O that it's referencing. Or is it deal damage? Okay, so that's the tooltip. It says it does 1d8 rather than 1d6. Applies status, Hunter's Mark 0. Cool. And it does deal damage. Where is this? Amount of targets. So I changed the amount of targets to 2. Change the display name, the description. Target radius can be changed. Cooldown can be changed. Is it a concentration spell? Concentration spell ID. That's what's held over you, like what you're concentrating on. This level and spell school. It's weird that it's divination, but whatever. I think it's just default that. And it's a level 1 spell. So that will change, like a little mark, I believe, on the spell itself, and also just a couple of ways that it's referenced in the game. It won't change like where it is on a spell list. Anyways, hopefully you are a little more familiar with what's going on there. Okay, and once you have your spells, once you've created your spells and its spell boosts and passives, you would then go into the UUID editor and you would go and create a spell list. You create a new UUID, which is just type in whatever you want. It's going to create a new UUID that's not going to be shared with anyone else's thing. And then you can create a special list, and it will be the name of the thing, but also the reference as to like what folder it's in, whether it's in the target spells folder or the shout folder or whatever is going to be before it. And then you're going to have the thing that it's actually named, like the actual name of the spell. And that goes in there, separated by semicolons. You see these little semicolons there. They separate those, and you create that list. And then you just need, once you have that list, then it's about learning that list. And to learn that list, you need to know how to create a class. And to do that, what we do, it's fine, whatever, I don't care if it saves it. To create a class, you go to UUID object editor, and it's going to be, there's going to be two things that you need to create a class, which is class descriptions and these class progressions. And you're going to add these spell lists, obviously, for whatever you've got. And yeah, I find that it's, if you're going to create like an entire class, you won't need to create new feats for them, because essentially a feat is just a spell. And it's a little bit trickier to add things in the feat list. You generally want to replace the feats or something like that. I don't know, like you can find, I believe there is feats here. Let's check. Shared feats. No, it's not shown there. That's weird. Feat descriptions. Mobile adept. Okay, so this is a case where only some of the feats are shown here, because maybe the rest of the feats are shown in like shared dev or something. Where is feats? Shared dev, feats, feat descriptions, and then this has different ones, right? So oftentimes you'll find, I think it's because they worked in multiple teams in Larian Studios. So that's, I think, why they have like shared dev folder, and then they have like a shared folder. And like there's a team that did the start of the game, where you have like most of the first levels of things, and then there's the team that did more the end of the game, I believe. So they have like like it'll be part of the same list, but just different spells and abilities in different ones. Like this one in these ones are in shared dev, but these ones are in just shared, and you'll just have to kind of like look. But usually the bottom ones are the later iterations, and so you could change. You can override feats pretty easily. I don't exactly know how to add new ones, but it has something to do with feats, feat descriptions. There may even be lists involved. I don't know. Um, but let's just get the classes because it's kind of easier to implement like just spells and spell actions, like actions, and like weapon actions and things like that, and just put them into your class because literally you can put anything in your class. Like there could be a weapon ability, a weapon boost, or an armor boost, and you can literally just put that on your class. But okay, let's go to progressions. So in here, magic ignore slashing resistance. This is from the adamantine weapons, and you can literally put it on there and the character will have that ability no matter what weapon they use because they've got this passive that comes from that weapon or that piece of armor. You can literally just put weapon abilities, like you could put like reactive attacks from like some of the weapons that they have, or like where you get an extra reaction if you have a free hand, like from the duelist's prerogative or whatever. You could take those and you can literally just make a class around them. Like they have that ability as a base ability. You could do that. Or you could give them specific things from different classes. Like this has Pact of the Blade and it has fast movement from the Barbarian and it has Warding Flare from the Light Cleric. Warding Flare uses a reaction, and this class uses a reaction, and it just gives it something to use for its reactions. But if it uses that reaction, then it won't be able to use its other spells that turn. So it's just like whatever mechanic you think up, you can sort of play with here. So you need this table UUID for all your levels, So what you want to do is the very first thing to creating a class is to go into class descriptions here. You just create a new thing here so that it has a fresh UUID. You then create the name, the display name, the description that it has, and you create a new UUID just by going below it and typing in a random name, whatever. That's going to create a new UUID. You put that in the progression table UUID, and then you use that progression table UUID, and it's going to basically like connect them in a list together, so that they're all bound together and it's so that it works and functions. And then you can change what the primary and second, what the spell casting ability of this person is. You can change the sound class. You can choose whether they select a god or not based on that. You generally want to keep learning strategy all children. I don't know what that does, but that's what every class has. Must prepare spells. You can change this to yes, and then they have to prepare a spell, like they have to sleep and then change their spells. Can learn spells. I believe this is from spell scrolls. You can learn spells from spell scrolls like a wizard. And to do that, you would want to have this spell list here be like wizard spell list. Where's wizard spell list? You'll notice from like the wizard, it'll have it done correctly, but there'll be like wizard scroll list or something that it can take it from. if you want them to be able to learn that. Tags, I just set it as a fighter because it's just generically a kind of fighter class. Don't know why it's got this ranger stuff, but you can change that to like different equipment. It's just you're limited as to what class equipment you start with. Yeah, so that can be a little annoying. And often when you input it through this class equipment thing, it will have basic names and generic names rather than the input name that you put on it. So it can be kind of weird like that. You can mod this. You can mod the whole toolkit so that you can input weapons and stuff into the game, like into the initial Nautiloid. I believe there's even a way to do it so that you can put things into the tutorial chest. But then you would need to upload your mod to Nexus, I believe, rather than through the official channel, because I think you can only use the unmodded version for their official channels, and then you have to do everything else through Nexus if you like crack it so that there's more options. But if you don't crack it, then it's better just to get a cheat editor, and then you can just input it at the start of the game, and it's not that much of a hassle. But here, character creation pose, this has never changed, even though that I've changed it sometimes. It might, like I might have done one with like a druid, and then it actually came up like acting like a druid. But I mean, your mileage may vary changing the character creation pose. You just want to look at the other classes, find what the UUID is that it's referencing, and then put that UUID in. You can change what the base HP of your class is and how much it gets per level. And then there's just silly things like hotbar stuff that is really not that important. And this is probably important if you're doing spellcasting things. So your multi-class spellcasting level. So if they were to dip into this as a multi-class, is it a full caster level that they gain, or is it just half a caster level, or a third, or a quarter, or whatever? And that's where that's controlled. And that's really all that's in the class description, but that's just the thing that houses everything else. And then you go to progressions and you create a progressions thing. And there are progressions you can reference from up here in shared and shared dev. So shared will have the progressions of levels 1 to 5. Levels 1 to 5, right? Of like barbarian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so it will show you how that's structured. So you can take that and use that as a reference. But it will only do that to 5. So then you have to go to shared dev. And in progressions here, you will have it going to higher levels. So where it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right? And so you can use these for reference for these higher levels. And that's just a little annoying thing how it's split like that. But once you're aware of it, then you can kind of work around it. Okay. So what you do is you have certain passives added. There's certain passives removed for each spell. So you could have it so that you started with spell slots, but then it removes the spell slots and they become warlock spell slots where they refresh on a short rest. And like it could change every level, like however you want to do it. Like you could have a random class which just changes every level. You gain like a different set of abilities every level or something. Like you could create that because of this passives removed thing. and you can also remove spells in these selectors. See where this says add spells? This isn't a selector, it just literally gives you them. But often these selectors give you actual selections like skill expertise and these skill proficiencies. Now you'll notice there's UUIDs here. So these UUIDs of these skills, they're just taken from other classes. I don't know where the actual list of where all the skills are. Like I know spell lists, but I don't know where skill lists are held. Maybe it's in like lists here. Maybe there is like a skill list. Where is lists? Skill lists. There is skill lists. Okay. Here you go. So here's the skill list. So you could create a skill list or override a skill list to have different things. And then you would take this UUID and you would put that in your progressions. Where is progressions? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Not that one. My progressions. Okay. So in this select skill things, you would put the UUID of that list that you created, and you'd put it in there. And then that would allow you to have that specific set of skills or that specific set of expertises to choose from. Add spells. This is just from your spell lists. So like these ones, and you take the UUID and you add spells from that. And you can have, instead of add spells, there will be select spells. So you can get a reference from that from like the wizard classes. So if we go to the wizard class, where is that? In progressions. Or even clerics, right? They select spells. So where's theirs? Adds? No, those are the add spells. So the add spells are going to be like things that they just get, and then there's going to be things like select spells, select skills, select spells. So you see this here, select spells, and then it's got like a list, and then they choose 3 of those, and then it says here they're always prepared. That's because cleric spells are always prepared. Those ones are always prepared. I think that's because they're cantrips, so they're always prepared. So if we go down to cleric 2, no, let's try 3. Oh, it just adds spells. So it just adds the spells, and then it doesn't say always prepared or whatever after it. It's just like add spells. And then based on the class description, it's like they have a certain amount of whatever connected to it. What is it? Where is it? So in class descriptions, we have cleric, and cleric has god, but it also must prepare spells, right? So it must prepare spells, and that's what's saying like, okay, now you've got to prepare a certain amount of spells based on your wisdom level and your actual level, how many you can prepare. And the spell casting ability is based off that tells you how many spells you can prepare. So if it was like a sorcerer, that would be charisma, and you could have a must prepare spells thing just the same as a cleric, but you would just have to select that as a yes. See, bards don't have to. Theirs just work. And same for sorcerers. And same for warlocks. But wizards must prepare spells as well. But they can also learn spells. So just take things reference from from whatever class is going to be closest to whatever you're doing, and then go into your progressions, and through each of these, just adjust it so that you have the right skills that you want, the right spells getting added that you want, and the right boosts that you want. So these boosts are the initial starting things like your saving throw proficiencies, whatever passives they're going to be gaining, and then you can remove anything that you want when the passives removed. So like, for example, extra attack is removed when you add extra attack 2. That's a thing that's normally done, and that's normally what you'll use that for. It can sometimes be used for removing spells, like the Warlock will remove, I think it removes like some of the original spell slots that it had, like level 1's Warlock spell slots when it advances to having level 2 spell slots. So it'll remove like those things. So unlock level these Warlock spell slot level 1, but it will also get a boost here, which then says action resource spell slot level 1, and you get one of them, and then these things here, and then they get like Warlock spell slot 2, and it gets three of them there. So cool. You can add any passives that you find either in weapons, armor, things that are on the passives lists. So passives are usually, what are they? In spell data, I think. Status. Oh god, it's so bad how it switches around randomly like that. Okay, so not spell lists, spell data. Where's spell data? I think spell data is in the other thing. It's not in the UUID editor. Okay, so passives are always going to be in the stats. So here, passive. Right, so you can make your own passives here, but if we go up here, spell data, passives, here. So instead of for armor or for object, weapon, whatever, there's these passives. Ability improvements, dark devotion, dark vision, short resting, gaping wounds, overwhelm, armor of shadows, beast speech, cutting words, domain spells, expertise, giant killer, rage unlock, all these sorts of things are in here. And you won't find everything in here. So saying this again, you might have to go to shared dev or Gustav dev or whatever to find the rest of them. Shared dev, spell data, not in spell data, stats, passive. So you have your Dragonborn ancestry resistances here, savage attacks for savage attack feats. You have some aspects of beasts and stuff. You have bend luck and beguiling defenses. What is that? You built stoic barriers in your heart and mind and cannot be charmed. Cool. And you could look over here. What does it do? Status immunity. So this is, again, what I'm talking about, where there's like some base passives. Like there's passives you can find in these folders, but then there's like boosts and so on that are kind of like inherent in the system, like this status immunity. Like even if you were to look into status data boosts, I don't think you find status immunity in here. You might, this is huge. Where is this? That is absolutely huge. You can search, say immunity, or maybe not in that. Where is the search thing? I think file, edit, view, options, file, find, and then immunity. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have like the base status immunity in this folder, but you could search through the folders looking for it. But they often are looking at this status immunity in here. Yeah, so it's basically a step of whether you want use passives, statuses, stats, and the UUID lists and progression lists that you're just changing. Okay, let me just go back. Okay, all right. And as you go through each level, you just make sure you add and remove whatever you want. Usually it's just going to be these selectors that you add and then some just passives. So what passives do you want them to have? Like this fast reflexes thing is a specific passive I created. Where did I create that? I created it based off fast hands, but fast hands gives you a bonus action and I just changed it to giving you an extra reaction. So that isn't in here. This is going to be in stats. And did I create a passive? I think I did create passives. Okay. So fast reflexes. I also created a passive for Hunter's Mark. That's probably why it worked. Okay. Where is it? Boosts. So what fast reflexes does, it's a passive, but ultimately what it does is it does one of these base things that the system does, which is just action, it gives you an action resource, and that is a reaction action point. It just gives you one extra reaction action point. And yeah, you can create passives yourself that way. They're in the stats thing. So there's spells, there is stats passives that you can create, and then there are statuses from status boosts. Generally, those are the three things you're going to affect. So spell data, these, like even actions are going to be in here, like projectiles, rush attacks, like even Barbarian's Frenzy is a shout. It's kind of like a spell. Target attacks, these are like weapon actions are often in these, as well as like zone attacks. So even if you're not going to do spells, you want to go into the spell data thing to create what you want there. Sometimes you might create weapons, items, armor, but you also might just create a passive for your class, like that works as a feat, and you might just create it here in stats passive, right? And if it has a specific status, then you will want to do that in the status boost here. There is one more thing I want to show you with status boost though, because they can be complicated. So let's look at the Oasis spell of this character, because it applies something every turn, and sometimes you might want an ability like that. So first of all, let's just show the character. Do they have it? Yeah, they do. So they have this Oasis spell. They can cast it on themselves, and when they do, they can't be frightened. They receive 10 temporary hit points per turn, and they are resistant to necrotic, psychic, and cold damage. So like for the second part of the act, for the second act of the game, quite useful, but it only lasts for 3 turns, and you can only use it once per combat. So, you know, it's not as overpowered as it seems, but for those 3 turns, you'll be much stronger because of those temporary hit points. Now, to look at this, we look into stats. And in stats, that's probably going to be in, it might be target actually, because I think it casts on a target, like on yourself. Like it only applies on yourself, but let's see if it's there. Is it Oasis? Nope, it's not there. Is it Shout? No. Zone. That'd be so weird if it was a zone. No. It's probably almost definitely a target. Heroism. Yeah. Okay, so it's based off heroism. That was the reference that I used. Apply status, heroism, and you see like I did this convention that I set for myself, which was _O, just for override. Though you'll want to have a different one just in case like other people have different mods and they use the same thing, and so set your own, whatever your convention is. And it applies that status. It says it does it for 5 turns. Maybe it does do it for 5 turns. Okay, rather than 3 turns, like I said. I think I changed it back and forth a bit. Target radius. So the target radius is 1.5, which is basically able to select yourself. But the target conditions are self, so you can't select anyone else. If you remove that, then you could apply it to friends who are like allies standing next to you. So you could put something like ally and then have those 2 brackets there, and it could be applied to an ally. And you could also make, there's an amount of targets that it has if you wanted to, but in this case it's not useful. These are just the description parameters, the icon, the display name, the description, and the description parameters. This one just says that you gain 10 temporary hit points. And then tooltip just says status apply. Just make sure it's consistent with everything else that you're doing. So I don't 100% know what each of these things do, but if you make them consistent, you can just get away with that, right? Tooltip permanent. I don't know what that one does. I didn't change it, and it doesn't seem to do anything super important. Prepare sound. I didn't change those because I like the way that it worked anyway, but you could change those for different things if you have a different reference that you want to add it to. Okay, cycle conditions. Ally not dead, no. Use costs. So you can change the use costs. That's a simple thing to change. Spell flags. Ignore previously picked entities. I think that's just like you can't select yourself twice with the spell, which is fine. Okay, so what's the main thing working here? The main thing working here is here, spell properties. So it applies it for 5 turns. So that's literally all the spell does, is it applies this status, heroism, 5 turns. And it tells you a bunch of information about it. And it tells you how you can apply it to yourself, when you can apply it to yourself, why, that sort of stuff. And that's connected there. Also here is a cooldown, super useful. if you want to change cooldowns and so on. Like you could, I think you can also back on the thing where it takes like an action point or a reaction point or whatever. Back here, where is it? Use costs is what it's called. Use costs. You can make it cost like a spell action. Okay, so use costs. You can make it cost like a magic spell slot, like a spell slot. And you would put that in here. You just find something that has a reference for using a spell slot. None of these use spell slots because I didn't create anything that uses spell slots because the class doesn't use them. But you would just put in there like spell slot level 1 or whatever, similar to this, and it would go into the use cost, and then it would cost a spell slot. Okay, so that's the main use of that heroism thing, and all it does is it really just applies a status, and then that status is in here, status boost, likely heroism O, right? And then you'll see this heroism temp HP thing. This is important as well, but I got that from the normal heroism spell tree, so I just kind of keep it consistent, change what I can change. So description parameters, this is gain temporary hit points 10. That's just a description. It doesn't change the thing. Sound loops don't really matter. Stack ID. Interesting. It seems this isn't really important, but this could be just, you just change this to heroism, like whatever the name is that you're using, and then it will use that item, like it will use that icon. Status immunity. Okay, so these are the boosts that it's picking up. So the status, which applies for however many turns, 5 turns in this case, gains these abilities, these resistances, and so on. So whatever boost you're going to put on there, like you could put a boost of like, you're going to get extra attack for like bless, or you're going to get like advantage, or some other ability like enhanced movement speed, whatever it is that your thing does, or like enhanced AC. You could change your AC with the spell, and it only lasts for a certain amount of turns. You could have that, and you just put that with boosts, and you just put whatever boosts that you want on there. Then this tick functors. This one is just so that you have the ticking things working right. So what's this one? Applies. Okay, no, this one is actually important. So tick functors is basically each tick, so each turn, what does it do? So this has like each turn, it regains skill, it regains hit points, it gives you 1 hit point, and then it also applies the status heroism temp HP for 1 turn, which is what gives you 10 temporary hit points. So it's basically saying give them 10 temporary hit points for 1 turn. But to give them those temporary hit points for 1 turn, it needs to be a status. So that's why it's like that. And then on apply, you could have it so that it doesn't apply the hit points on the first time that you put it, or you can make it so that as you press the spell, you get 10 temporary hit points, and that's why there's this apply status here. On remove status, it just removes the heroism temporary hit points. And yeah, so if it was a concentration spell, which it's not, it would use this remove events or remove conditions. So if saving throw, or like if it was hostile, you could have a saving throw which, removes it, or it can be like you can create a concentration check, like if hit and do not connect, blah, blah, blah. Like just look for something like Spirit Guardians and how it shows that if you're hit, does it, like, do you maintain the spell? And then you can look at like these remove conditions and whether it's gonna remove the thing. So then we look at this heroism. Wait, let's look a little further. No, there's nothing there. Okay, cool. So then we look at this and stack ID, temporary HP. That's just straight from the heroism one, so I didn't change that. Stack priority, 10. So that's how much temporary hit points you get. The stack type is override. It could also be one that is cumulative. I don't know if it's called cumulative, but where it would just add on to itself each turn if it's not taken away. But the stack is the amount of the HP added, temporary HP added. And then, here we go. Boosts. This is the thing that actually does it. So temporary HP, 10. And that's basically it. So you just find things that are kind of like predictable enough for you to change without it breaking, and then you just change those things. So a class ultimately just comes down to those boosts, spells, and changes. And that's effectively it. And then you know how to create a class. Just always look at the 3 different things that you can do, which is this this root templates folder where you can create items and you can edit those items. Open for edit. And it should come up over to the left here. Should open. Come on. Well, it's not opening on the side here for whatever reason, but okay, that's cool. And you can edit those things. Then you have stats, which is usually your next port of call, where you're basically creating your spell effects, your spell actions, and so on, and also what boosts and abilities your weapons have. Or your armor has. And you just go along and you just make sure all these things are consistent with the thing that you want it to be like. Whether that be like a weapon as well, like your weapons, you can just make sure that they've got the right passives or boosts that you want. And they've got things like proficiency groups, boosts on equip, right? So this one gives you concussive smash because you use that mace. You can change what kind of weapon actions your specific new weapon has, or you can change the default boosts that it has, like a weapon enchantment and so on. Just look at other weapon types or other armor types or other boost types for reference, and then you can't really go wrong. And once you've done stats, then you generally go to UUID, and you will create your class and your progressions, and you will also create your lists, whether that be your skill lists or your spell lists. and then you can put that into your class in these skill selector spaces. Okay, I hope that makes sense and helps you understand how to create a class. I know it's an incredibly long video. I was going to use a script, but then I just got into doing it, and yeah. All right, take it easy, and I hope you have fun modding and playing the game. All right, take it easy. Bye.